Corey, for anyone listening or watching,
They should already know.
what do you do?
In short, managing director, Bridgemark Strategies. We're one of the largest independent recruiting firms for financial advisors. So for any financial advisor interested in making a change from a broker-dealer RIA standpoint, it's a jungle out there. There's hundreds of different firms. They're all calling you. They're all DMing you. They all have sales goals to hit. They're all telling you that their firm is the absolute best fit for your organization. And while you're running a business, while you're taking care of your family, you have really finite time to make a really smart decision. So we just help you throughout the process. Been doing that for about 6 years. And prior to that, worked with two of the largest independent broker dealers in the country, kind of as a captive recruiter. So have helped over 1,000 advisors go independent and finally decided to take some of my own medicine. So
I want to dig into a little bit of that backstory later on, but we'll jump into Nic's investment news headline real quick.
Yeah. So the Commonwealth, just in the industry as a whole, there's just been a monstrous amount of M&A and consolidation in the independent broker dealer space. If you go back 10 years, independent news every year, they show what the top 20 broker dealers are by revenue. And if you look 10 years ago at the top 20, and then you look today, there's only 5 that are still left in the same name. So one of these probably happens every single year. And sometimes it just takes a minute to take a look and see how much mergers and acquisitions and consolidating has been in the independent broker dealer space. But with Commonwealth specifically, Commonwealth was one of those firms. They kind of shouted from the mountaintops that they were not for sale, that they were a small, privately held, independent broker dealer that would never sell. And I think this took a lot of financial advisors by surprise. LPL is a great firm, but it took a lot of advisors by surprise. And, a lot of people made a move to Commonwealth to be part of a firm that's going to have that stability, that's not going to sell. So really, in short, pretty much every independent broker dealer in the industry has truly redlined their incentive offers for financial advisors to make a move and incentivize some of the defectors to kind of come over to their organization. But regardless if you're coming from Commonwealth or not, those same deals are still on the table for any independent financial advisor that is looking to make a move. And it's truly brought these upfront offers, economic incentives, higher payouts to any financial advisor that's making a move. So just to give you a little bit of background, 10 years ago, you were probably looking, when you made a transition from independent to independent firm, maybe 30% of your trailing 12 production. Some of these deals with the right business mix, the right amount of assets under management are north of 150% of trailing 12 production. So some life-changing money to make a move to another firm right now.
So Corey, real quick, you said Commonwealth, this was something that no one saw coming. Commonwealth was kind of felt like going to be around or be here for quite a while. How did this shake things up? Do people feel like, well, if this could happen, what else?
Yeah. I think it shook up the whole industry. I think it didn't, just shake up Commonwealth advisors. I think it started for financial advisors to say like, hey, am I vulnerable here? If I make a move to another firm, am I going to get sucked back into the gravitational force, another larger organization? So there's a lot of questions that are being answered out there that are being asked right now. And there's a lot of financial advisors they're really looking to go to safety. So a lot of independent broker dealers, they've been through this mergers and acquisitions deal maybe once or twice now in the last 5 years, where they've had to repaper their client's business, learn a new technology system. Their client service has suffered twice. And they're saying, hey, I want to make sure that this never happens to me again. So there's been a lot of interest in the RIA side. Without digging in too much, making a move and opening up your own RIA, you're pretty much ensuring that you never have to go through a huge client disruption event like this again. Or even if you plug into an existing RIA, if you decide to open up your own RIA down the road or move to another, it's probably 1/10 of the paperwork it is to move from one firm to another versus inside of the broker dealer world.
Being familiar with your content, right? That's one thing it sounds like, and Nic, you could speak to this as well, but it sounds like advisors, that's one of the reasons maybe advisors don't want to make moves as often as maybe financially or economically they're incentivized to do so, because they don't want to go through the paperwork and all that chaos. How is this, how are you helping or talking to people? Because now it sounds like well, my firm might do this anyways in the background and I don't even have a choice about it. Like, does that scare advisors less or give them more incentive to explore their options?
I think with the Commonwealth deal, and a lot of these deals, like it's the soft repapering, right? Like the easy route, theoretically, like the easier path is just to go along with the acquisition, right? I mean, that's theoretically easier logistically if you're a Commonwealth advisor to just fold into the LPL ecosystem than it would be to start your own RIA or to join another independent broker dealer. Is that a fair statement, Corey?
A lot of firms, when there is mergers and acquisitions, I'm not talking specifically about LPL and Commonwealth. This is across all. A lot of these firms are going to promise a really seamless transition. They're going to promise, tape to tape, which basically means you go to sleep at one firm and you wake up at another firm and all of your assets are already over there. But over time with a lot of these acquisitions, we've just seen that not be the case, inside of a lot of firms that have merged. I mean, there's just going to be growing pains. There's different leaderships, there's different cultures, there's different technologies. Even from that standpoint alone, that's a couple months of growing pains, even if everything moves over perfectly. But from past experiences with a bunch of these consolidation events, that's been it couldn't be further from the case. I mean, there's still financial advisors that have been going through some of these events and, 5 months later, they're still feeling like they're not 100% at home. So when you're going through this process of consolidation, you need to keep in mind that the people inside of your organization that's sold, they're getting some money up front, but a big part of their compensation on the back end, the sale of their business, is based on the advisors from your firm staying there. So, when the leadership of this firm is saying that everything is going to be okay and it's going to be a piece of cake and, everything is going to be super, super easy, I just recommend any advisor picks up, has conversations with people that have gone through it before or recruiters that have gone through it before to just get a full understanding of,
And what else would they say? Right. I mean, there is no plan B in the script of what to say, for an M&A type of thing, right? The president, CEO has to make that statement, so I do think it's great for any financial advisor who's in that situation to get some wise counsel, from yourself or someone like yourself who has a little bit more nuance into the situation.
Yeah, I mean, the leaders of these organizations, they start ruminating. Advisors will ask, 2 weeks before a firm is sold, like, hey, are we selling? And they're like, no, absolutely. We're like moving forward. And then 2 weeks later, the decision comes out. It's, there's a script to this, and it's your job to go out there and figure out.
Got to execute the script.
Yeah.
How long do you think the moment of time that we're in lasts? You talk about record deals. We're seeing
the golden age of the advisor transition, right? I think that's where we're at. To the Warren Buffett thing: when it's raining gold, don't put out a thimble. It feels like we are in the golden age of independent advisor opportunities. Do we think the landscape looks drastically different 6 months from now, a year from now?
I don't think 6 months or a year from now. I mean, I think this consolidation and mergers acquisition environment and the interest that private equity and other smart money has in the industry is here to stay. I mean, just to give you some insight, I mean, when a private equity firm goes to another industry and they invest in something, if it even has an even single digit profitability percentage, they're extremely excited about that. 8-9%. The average profitability inside of a $2 million plus financial advisor's business is 35 to 45% profit margins. There is a 99% retention rate when these firms are merged. And the larger an organization gets, the higher the multiple they can get for their sales price. So private equity is just so excited about this space. And not to mention, almost all of the revenue is recurring revenue. So private equity is just so excited in the space. They continue to jump into the independent broker-dealer world, the regional broker-dealer world, and then these private equity-backed RIAs are truly offering life-changing multiples for financial advisors that want to sell your practice as well. So private equity is driving up all of this. And as long as private equity is in this business, you're going to see a ton more consolidation in the RIA space. You're going to see a ton more consolidation in the independent broker-dealer space, but also you're going to see, record high, multiples either to move your practice or sell your practice. So it's exciting times.
Forgive me for asking the obvious here, but like obviously the market continuing to run its course and the organic growth that takes place with that obviously helps a lot of this, or the spend feels a little easier, right?
100%. 100%. I still think there's just going to be, there's a kind of just an insatiable appetite out there for these private equity firms to, buy and attract these top quality firms. Seeing a humongous change though in the industry, typically like a $2 million trailing 12 revenue practice was kind of out of the range to get some of the top multiples out there. And even with, practices, $2 million and to $3 million in trailing 12 production, we're starting to see them get, those record multiples that you see in Investment News and Advisor Hub as well. So insatiable hunger across the board.
I know financial advisors probably ask some form of the question to you all the time, but being in your space, do you have concerns about an advisor joining a company that is private equity backed versus being publicly traded?
No, not necessarily. I always tell financial advisors when they're making a decision-making process, especially when they're making a move to the independent channel where a lot of this private equity-backed interest is. You can't make a decision in this industry, further than 8-10 years out. I know financial advisors are looking for their lifetime partner, but the statistics are different. Financial advisors make a transition on average every 8 years. And it's not that they're necessarily going out there and chasing a check, or people's priorities change. It's so unlikely for a firm's direction to always go in the same direction as a financial advisor. Things change. Think about how differently you thought about the business 8 years ago than you do now. So, these private equity firms, they have an interest in these firms. Their typical turnaround time is about 7 years. And many times, once their investment period is done, they're just making a move to, another private equity firm. Private equity doesn't necessarily mean there's an investment and then 7 years you're selling to another firm. There's plenty of examples out there on where it's worked really, really well too. I think it's just really important to look at the private equity firm, ask the right questions to these different firms in terms of what their intentions are and just see what they've done historically to see if it makes sense or not. The biggest benefit is on the independent side is that, you own your clients, you own the data. So if something happens down the road, not necessarily, in industry or a huge life-changing event, you still own the poker cards and have the opportunity at that time to make a move elsewhere.
Corey, is a transition for every advisor, and or what should an advisor be considering when they hear transition and all these things we're talking about and the market's so hot? Like maybe they weren't thinking about it, should they?
Yeah, I think absolutely. I'll start off by saying I've never pressured a financial advisor to make a move. That's a decision that they make on their own. I think my job in the process is just helping empower them with the right information and cutting through sales spin to get accurate information to make that decision. From there, if they decide that they don't want to leave, that's totally fine. But if you're a financial advisor right now that hasn't picked up their head in the last 3 years, I just really think you're missing out. The industry with technology, with long-term economics, with upfront economics, it has just totally changed. And if you think you understand what else is out there, I don't mean to sound disrespectful, but you don't. We watch we look at this industry all day, every day, and there are new entrepreneurial advisors, leaderships of some of the leading organizations in the industry that have made a move and started their own firm to fill in for some of the gaps that have maybe made a financial advisor not want to make a transition before, whether it's office space or a really flexible W-2 channel where you can do all the things that you want on the independent side, get equity in a larger organization, outsource your money management, lead generation, firms that are super awesome at helping you build a really good marketing presence. There's just so many new opportunities out there that if you haven't picked up your head in a while, you might be missing out on your idea of utopia and you just have no idea it's out there.
What should advisors look for, consider, think about, keep an eye on when they look to hire someone like yourself? Because there are so many options. And like you've always said, which I love, is like everyone's going to tell you what you want to hear. But like what happens when push comes to shove and pen to paper?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a couple different things, right? Just like with financial advisors or doctors or attorneys, whatever it is, just because you're a doctor, attorney, or recruiter, or advisor, like it doesn't mean you're a good one, right? There's different levels of value that recruiters provide. And there's kind of two separate types of recruiters out there in the industry. There's ones that are truly consultative. They have experience working inside of these firms, seeing them from the inside out. They are with you from the very beginning to the end to be your advocate, to help you ask questions, to help you cut through sales spin, to help you negotiate, be your unbiased soundboard. One thing financial advisors don't really think of, especially if you're making a move from like a W-2 firm, you can't tell anybody about your transition. You can't tell your assistant, really. You can't tell any of your coworkers.
You can't even tell your wife because I've heard this happen before. You can't even tell your wife because your wife might be friends with somebody that is connected back to the employer.
Yeah, or you tell your wife, and I would definitely tell my wife. She's 5 times smarter than me, but like she's not in the industry, right? So she can be the voice of reason, but she doesn't know all of the things in the industry. So there's someone that kind of works with you like truly soup to nuts throughout this whole process. They have a process. They have questions for you to ask. They're prepared. And then there's people that are calling out there and that are basically just appointment setters for these larger broker dealers. Once they make an introduction, they kind of go away on to the next one, and you're totally on your own, to be able to do this. So the questions that I would be asking are, what's your experience moving people from my specific firm? How many people have you helped? How have you helped them? Do you have any testimonials or people that you could introduce me to show the value that you brought? Have you worked in the broker dealer space before? Have you seen things from the inside out? Have you been in leadership anywhere? Have you been in production? Do you truly understand, this business? Do you have a website? Do you have white papers and podcasts that are like adding value out there that I can actually see before I decide that I'm going to work with you? If they don't have a website, if they don't have marketing things, if they haven't had experience, all of those things are humongous red flags. Once you decide to move forward and have an introduction with one of these firms with a recruiter, you're kind of stuck with them the whole time. So it's extremely important to you to evaluate the recruiter that you're working with, the attorney that you're working with, all of these different things. Certain people are going to have more experience lifting people out of your specific firm, and they're going to know the tips, the tricks, the things to avoid, the mistakes people have made along the way to make sure that this is as less stressful and as easy as a process as possible for you.
I think you have two things really going in your favor. And this, I love this for anybody in any industry. One, you have a podcast. Two, you have a YouTube channel. And what that gives me is a historical viewpoint of the things that you've said and the things that you've thought. And we have receipts, right? And you're not wishy-washy going from one thing to the next, changing your viewpoint all the time. Like we literally have receipts. And if I'm going to hire an estate planning attorney, a new tax professional, like I want receipts. I want to know what the reviews are on certain things and are they consistent over, a long sample size. So I know that you put a lot of work to draw people into your ecosystem, and I hope it's paying off because you've done a lot to get people free information that when they're ready, I hope they reach out to you and take advantage of all the work you've put in.
I appreciate it. I truly believe, and it's a fact that, no one has more experience in the industry when it comes from knowing these firms inside out. And I don't say that, from a cocky sense. Jeff Nash, the CEO of our firm, 20 years experience in management inside of LPL. Chris DeFrank, another 20 plus years of, seeing these mergers and acquisitions, seeing what can be negotiated, seeing where the skeletons are buried inside of all of these organizations. Me and myself, 15 plus years leadership inside of, LPL, Ameriprise. We have people from leadership from Kestra, Cetera, Ameriprise, some other independent broker-dealers inside of our firm. So when you work with us, like not only can we help you introduce to the right people, but you get an inside look on how these firms are motivated because we know the people inside of these organizations, which is just a benefit that you're going to get up and above with us that you're just not going to get with other recruiting firms.
Let me jump in your guys' fields for a second here. We're all three of us are in the client services business, but this question is for you guys specifically. Economics aside, how cool does it feel like when you sit back, and Nick, I've asked you this in the past, and like realize you've actually like helped change people's, but Corey used the word family because you have, right? Like you've changed people's families' lives positively, and then they shoot you a message, thank you. You don't know what this means. Like how does that, like that's still got to be like one of the coolest things.
Yeah. I mean it truly is, getting the gift baskets, getting, the awesome logo golf balls from, all the brands I've helped launched. I stay in touch with these people. I tell them all the time that, the job's not done. If you need help, if you need to get connected to somebody, I'm still always here, and we talk all the time, and it's truly awesome to be able to make the impact, versus being a recruiter where jamming a round peg of a practice into a square hole of a solution. Just truly being able to help advisors sit in the passenger seat with them and help them find the right spot. There's nothing better.
You're not slinging the proverbial annuity, right? You're doing the holistic planning to get people to the right place, man. It's it's such a good feeling when you can help people, go from where they are to where they want to go, or help them get to a goal a little bit quicker. I mean, Corey, I'm sure you've probably dealt with it, that people will say like, well, I'll go independent once I hit this, right? And then you follow up with that person a year later and like, oh, well, you're at the goal. And you're like, well, I'm going to go independent once I do this. And like they continue to just move the goalpost. And
dude, he's got one of the saddest videos I think I've like, it's not even sad, but it is like of an advisor who said, met with him 3 years later, met with him 3 years later, met with him. All of a sudden we're 9 years down the road. And he's like, I wish I had done this then. And now he's just stuck.
Yeah. I mean, that's the thing. I mean, there's some financial advisors out there in the industry that, that specific person that we're talking about, Corey, that guy's making $1.5 million a year in a small town. And, he's unhappy with a few things, but he's also really, really thankful. I never really understood that when I was younger. When I was a 25-year-old recruiter, I was like, how can you leave that much money on the table? But there's nothing better than peace of mind as well. So, when we bring advisors through this process, as I've mentioned before, the decision's still up to you. We give you the information to kind of get you up to the cliff and feel as empowered as possible with the decision. But, if someone decides not to go, never pressure from anyone like me. Like I launched my own business. Like I saw how stressful it was. My wife had to pull me up off the floor like a few times in the beginning and be like, stay focused. Like it's scary. And I leaned on a lot of people and I asked a lot of questions. And it's the most rewarding thing personally that I've ever done. The scariest as well. But I mean, that's never something that I'm going to take lightly.